are video games losing their identity. People think video games are losing their identity. Games like Legend of Zelda, Mario, and Final Fantasy of all things. Those aren't the games I grew up with. They're not the same. It's a travesty. Everything is wrong with them. And are you upset like me? Are you as upset as me? Because let me tell you, I'm not really that upset about it. No, it might seem like it with that intro, but I'm not really upset with that. If anything, I like that games are continuously evolving, and you know, let me just get into the video. So I've been hearing an argument lately that Legend of Zelda, not really Mario, but sometimes Mario, and Final Fantasy, a lot of Final Fantasy, these are not the games that I grew up with. This is not Legend of Zelda. This is not Final Fantasy. And I'm just gonna here to say that that's dumb. That's stupid. Yeah, I said that's really stupid to think. And now I understand you grew up with this particular game, and you've grown to love these mechanics on said game. But games themselves are constantly evolving. When games don't innovate, they kind of die out. They fizzle out. Now, to say that Legend of Zelda will fizzle out because they keep continuing the same format over and over again is probably not true, but I feel like it would only hurt the franchise to continue to not innovate and do something brand new on each and every game. Even though there's a bunch of Legend of Zelda games that have the tried and true formula that they always do, they do some unique things in each of those games that are different from each other. They're separated, if you will. Like, for example, you got the original Zelda where it was just complete, like, you know, open-ended adventure, and you just go to this dungeon, complete this dungeon, fight this enemy, right? And then you go to Adventure of Link. Wait. The Adventure of Link. Oh. Yeah, I can. The Adventure. Let's not talk about Adventure of Link, okay? Let's go into A Link to the Past, okay? Link to the Past was freaking phenomenal. We went from The Adventure of Link to A Link to the Past, and it was freaking amazing. And then we had the transition into the 3D landscape, which was another great game. I loved Ocarina of Time. I mean, a lot of people will say it didn't age as well, but I still really, really enjoy Ocarina of Time for what it was and what it is. It's the first 3D Zelda game we got to play, and it 100% innovated. Can you imagine on the Nintendo 64 instead they went with the 2D route again? I don't think it would have done as well or blown as much minds. Hell, I feel like Ocarina of Time, you know, wrote the book on how to do 3D exploration the way it does. I feel like a lot of other games would have had a harder time, at least. I'm not gonna say they wouldn't have existed, but they would have a harder time getting started if Ocarina wasn't there to write the freaking the rules for it, you know? And then the same thing could be said with Mario. We started with our 2D platform. Hell, we started with the Mario Bros. With the whatever that was, and then we went to the 2D platform on the Mario Bros. And then it transitioned into Mario 64. And my God, Mario 64, I think that game kind of stands the test of time. Mario 64 is freaking great. Can you imagine if we didn't have Mario 64? Because, it's not the Mario I grew up with. This is not a Mario game. Can you imagine that? Yeah. That's what basically I see this argument as. And then if we go into Final Fantasy, let's go into Final Fantasy for a second. Final Fantasy has been innovating games since it came out. It's all about risks. The whole game is about risk taking. Hell, the original creator of Final Fantasy, the guy who was making Final Fantasy, this was his last chance of making a game, or else he was done with the business. So that's why he called it Final Fantasy. And we winded up with one. And each and every game has its own unique mechanics. Whether you grew up with the job system, or you grew up with materia, or you grew up with Final Fantasy IX, or you grew up with the Blitzball era. It's all different. Every game has its own identity, and it does something different than the last game. And now we're gonna go into the newer games now. A lot of the newer games, so Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, for example, a lot of Zelda fans or OG Zelda fans are saying this is not a Zelda game. This is anything but a Zelda game. And I'm here to tell you, you're wrong. Yeah, you're wrong. Dumb. I understand where they're coming from, though. I absolutely get it. Okay, I understand when they go to play a Zelda game, they're looking for that adventure that they had with, whether it was Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, A Link to the Past, whatever game they played. Breath of the Wild is a big departure from those games. However, it has a similarity with one game previously. Can anybody guess what that is? It's the original Legend of Zelda. The original Legend of Zelda is very similar to how Breath of the Wild is, you know? It's I'm pretty sure Onuma said so himself, that he wanted a grand, like, to have the sense of when you first played Legend of Zelda back in the 80s. It feels like a bigger, grander game, just in a 3D landscape, way more exploration, you know? And I can get where fans are coming from, where, oh, I don't have my traditional dungeons, and you know, maybe there's not as much enemy variety that they want. Like, I have some of those complaints with the original Breath of the Wild. Some of them were fixed in Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, the enemy variety is a lot bigger in Tears of the Kingdom. Could be a bit more, but I'm content with it. And the dungeons are pretty awesome. I really like the dungeons, even though they were a little bit easy. They were on the easier side, and you were able to cheese it, but that's up to you as the player of how you want to tackle dungeon or said shrine. I just feel like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom definitely embodies what Zelda is. It's an exploration adventure game, you know? And to say that it's not a Legend of Zelda game is just, I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's right. And I feel like the same thing can be said about Mario 64 or the 3D Mario games when transitioning into them. We had, you know, Mario Bros. 1 and 2 and Mario Bros. 3. I love Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. When we went from those games to 3D games, I'm pretty sure people were like, this is not a Mario game. This is not my Mario game. And I'll tell you this. They set the bar, okay, on how 3D platformers are supposed to be made. Nintendo made Mario 64, and they're like, okay, this is how you do 3D platformers. They literally set the bar for it. Can you imagine we didn't have Mario 64 because they were too afraid to not do their old school 2D platforming, which they started doing later on anyway. They started making those games later on anyway because people still like them, you know? But to say that Mario 64 isn't a Mario game either is stupid. It's a stupid thing. And the last thing I want to talk about is Final Fantasy. Now, I know probably on my channel there's probably a lot of Nintendo fans, maybe not a lot of Final Fantasy fans, but if you don't know, I'm a huge Final Fantasy nerd. I've played almost every single Final Fantasy game. My first being 7, okay? I loved 7. Now, every Final Fantasy game that I played since has always been different in some form of way. I remember playing 8, and I'm like, where's my materia? This isn't Final Fantasy. And then I quickly realized, well, every Final Fantasy isn't the freaking same, biscuits. Learn, okay? They're all different. Final Fantasy, in and itself, is a risk. When they first made Final Fantasy, when that developer made Final Fantasy, and he decided, this is my last hurrah. If this doesn't work out, I'm done making video games. I'm not doing it again. And he named it Final Fantasy. And thank God it was a success, because now I got one of my favorite video game franchises. And ever since then, every Final Fantasy since then has innovated in some form of way. There have similarities. There are similarities from the older games, but they're always different. every Final Fantasy is different, and it brings out unique mechanics that weren't in the previous one, or they took from the previous one and added something else. You know, whether you grew up with the materia system, the job system, or Blitzball, yeah, or you grew up with the MMO on 11, because 11 was kind of insane. You know, 11 was the first MMO on a console, I think, and that's pretty freaking crazy. So, going on from there, to say that Final Fantasy 16, because now this is the newest one and the newest one we have, to say it's not a Final Fantasy game is the dumbest thing I've heard. It is 100% a Final Fantasy game. Now, I get it, there's like some mature themes in the game. The game is pretty freaking raw. Okay, the game is very raw. You know, it doesn't like beat around the bush, but to say like, oh, like usually, you know, I'm here for the like not so much of the mature themes. Final Fantasy has had mature themes for a very long time. We even go back to 6. 6 touches base on death, suicide, and all that, and the same thing can be said for 15, accepting death. And then you go back to 7. 7 had a lot of mature themes in it, and I'm pretty sure they censored most of it and stifled the writer's creativity because they wanted it to keep it, you know, kind of PG-ish. But 16, Yoshi P must have been like, nope, we're going fully raw. We're raw dogging. Oh wait, don't put that in the. I'm gonna cut that out of the video. All right, and that's enough from me. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think like, stupid New Yorker, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or you agree with me? Whatever you decide, you know, like, comment, subscribe, and all that. You know, please subscribe. I can use some more subscribers. It'd be really, really nice. And I also stream on Twitch, you know, a lot. And I'll catch you in the next one.